Wait, maybe it's working now. All right, there we go. Perfect. All right. Now hopefully it's working. I don't know what was going on. It literally showed that I was live, but just black screen and no one could see me or hear me and the comments weren't loading for me. So I don't know if it was just a YouTube glitch or what was going on, but hopefully this link works and you guys can see my screen and hear me. Let me know. Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right, cool. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the trades that I've taken so far this week, or at least the trades that I've signaled because that's what's important. Those are the trades that I give to the chat, right? And I want to talk about the game plan moving forward. I think I'll have a lot better value tomorrow and Friday after some of these tech names report earnings. So, excuse me, Microsoft and Meta reported after hours. There's some good looking setups there. So I'll go over those. But I just want to go over the three trades that I've signaled so far this week. Not the best. I'll be perfectly honest. These are not beautiful trades at all. It's been kind of a slow start to the week for me. I'm green. I'm still green on the week, but yeah, definitely have gotten a little chopped around so far to start the week. Okay. But I still want to talk about them because, I just try to be transparent as possible. So the first trade that I signaled on Monday was Tesla. Okay, so I said I was in the Tesla 300 calls, 2.70 light size, and then I got stopped at minus 15%. It was a beautiful flush and reclaim. The 276 level is the big level that I had on Tesla, and we actually reclaimed it, and it looked really good for longs on that 276 reclaim. But then the market kind of just died out. The momentum faded, and I decided to stop under 275. I moved my stop up. My original stop was 274. I moved it up to 275 to prevent a bigger loss. So just a $1 stop on that. And Tesla actually wound up reclaiming later and broke back above 276. And on that second reclaim is when it made the big move, and it made like a $10 move. So this is really what I was looking for to happen. On my first entry, I wanted this big $10 move, and we could have made 100, 200% on that trade. Unfortunately, I just got chopped out, and it did one last shakeout. But if you tried to do the second reclaim at 276, you can see it actually reclaimed really well and then held that level for about an hour. Again, pretty choppy. It broke back above at 12:30 and didn't start making higher highs until almost 2 o'clock. Okay, so like an hour and a half of just chop from 278 to 276 in a tight range. But then it did make a really big move in the afternoon session. But hindsight's 2020. I got in this trade. It looked good to me at the time, and I got stopped out for only 15%. So no big deal. Yesterday, I took Nvidia and came out green on that trade. Not a very big green trade. I trimmed it 10%. I trimmed, 13%. I think was the highs that I saw. Yeah. So and then I got out of my runners in the green because I didn't want to give back any gains. Right. So this was the Nvidia 109 reclaim. As soon as this 5-minute candle broke back above 109, that was my entry. And then it popped into 109.70, 109.80. So it made about a 75-cent move. and that's where I got some nice trims off. But then, the weakness came into the market, and again, it got really choppy. So I've just been, unfortunately, sometimes you get stuck in names that are choppy while other names are moving well. And this just happened to be one of those weeks that I've just gotten stuck in some really choppy names, right? So I made money on this trade, nothing crazy, but I did trim at 10 to 13%. And then I sold the runners. So I used a trail stop of like 109.10, right? I didn't even wait for it to break back below 109 because the contract, the IV would have flushed. So as soon as this candle turned red, I just got out, right? So, I sold my runners in the green. Not a sexy trade, but still came out green on that trade yesterday. And then today, all right, today I got in NVIDIA puts. If you guys were on live, I tried this trade twice. So the first trade, I got out essentially at break even. I lost like $8 per contract, minus 2% on the first trade on my first entry. And then I got back end because it looked good again. But NVIDIA has just been kind of a choppy name to trade recently. I've noticed it hasn't been as clean as it used to be. So I got chopped around a little bit yesterday on NVIDIA. I got chopped around a little bit again today, and I took an 8% loss. Again, tiny losses. I literally lost $300 on that trade and made it back with SPY later in the day. But yeah, so this is the trade I took. It was a failure of that 106 level. As the market kind of was pumping up, SPY was hitting that 548 level, which was a big level. And I was looking for just a simple supply breakdown, right? So 106 was the level I had on my watch list for a reject. NVIDIA was showing signs of failure. It broke above to 106.40 and then wicked back below 106. So that's my entry, right? And then I got immediately stopped out when it broke back above 106 on my first entry. So I got out basically break even on the first entry. And then I got back in at this second candle over here when we flushed back below 106 because again it was looking weak and the market was starting to turn red. But it got chopped around and I wound up stopping out at high of day 106.40. So a 40-cent stop, that's really, really tight. I lost 8% on that trade. I got in at 2.22. I sold my contracts at 2.04. So I lost less than $20 per contract. Okay. So not the sexiest start for the week for me. Obviously, I was hoping I could signal some better trades. This 106 level looked really good today, and the 109 level looked really good yesterday for me. But that's all right. It happens. As long as you're not taking big losses, that's the only thing you have to really focus on, because those big losses are what mess you up at the end of the day. And it's okay to get reentries. Trying to take the same trade again. If it looks good, just get in and have tight stops, right? So 8 to 10%, maximum 15% really is what you guys should try to be focusing on for stops. That way, when you do take a win, you can just let it ride out and your wins become much bigger than your losses. Okay. So that was kind of the start of the week for me as far as those trades go. Now let's pop over to, let's talk about the plan for tomorrow. All right. Oops. Actually, let's go. Let's go here. Okay. All right. All right. So let's look at this. Investing.com. All right. So what do we have for tomorrow? Well, let me filter it out. United States, only in the important stuff, right? Today, why did the market start to sell off big time pre market? It's because of these two data points. ADP came out way lower than forecast, the employment change, and then GDP came out negative. So, what defines a recession? It's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP. So, we officially had one negative quarter of GDP. So, if we have another negative reading of GDP next quarter, then we will be in a recession. So, that's why the market sold off pre market, right? There's fear going into the market that we're going into recession. If they say we are in a recession, usually that's the bottom. Okay. So if next quarter we get another negative print, I don't know what happens between now and then. That's another quarter away. Okay. But if we do get another negative print and SPY's at 450 or whatever, that would probably be around the bottom for the market. Okay. But that's why the market sold, because of that economic data, that GDP and the ADP. As far as earnings go, let's jump to that. Earnings. Okay. Okay. So Microsoft and Meta reported after hours today. Tomorrow after hours, we have Amazon and Apple. So those are our big tech names. Obviously, Hood, QCOM, we can look at some of those as well. But for our big names, we have Microsoft and Meta. All right. And then after hours, we have Amazon and Apple tomorrow. So these are, we can take some trades on these. I'm looking at levels on Microsoft and Meta, so I can take a trade off the open tomorrow. Okay. So let's jump into the charts. Okay. Can you guys see trading view now? All right, perfect. Okay, cool. So I want to start by talking about the market. I'm gonna go over SPY and QQQ, and then I'll go over some of the individual names that I'm watching for tomorrow. There's some really clean setups, right? So maybe I can put some size on and actually make a decent return compared to the lackluster start to the week so far. Okay, so for SPY, very obvious level 555. I mentioned this on my watch list yesterday. If SPY gets to 555, we can look for a reject in the market, and SPY made a massive move off of that level overnight from the data. Now, SPY is reclaiming 555 after hours because of the positive earnings results from Microsoft and Meta. So what can we do? We can watch for a 555 bounce on SPY tomorrow off of that level, that previous high. It's also, if you want to take a look at ES, okay, if you plan on trading futures instead of options tomorrow, watch for this ES 5600 bounce. All right, maybe it happens overnight, but hopefully it doesn't, and we can take it tomorrow. That 555 bounce, I like that level. All right, so that's SPY. For the Qs, the level is 476. Very obvious 476. Okay, and then if you're trading NQ, that level is 19,700. So if you're trading futures, the level is 19,700. If you're trading QQQ, the level is 476. So we can watch SPY 555 for a bounce, and we can watch the Qs 476 for a bounce tomorrow. All right. It obviously depends what happens overnight, but so far that looks good to me. All right. The structure is in place. We broke the highs. We broke that previous 555 high. Let's see if we can continue in this uptrend. All right. So that's SPY and QQQ. Apple, I'm not going to look at. They have earnings. I'm not trading Apple. One setup I love, AMD. Okay. So AMD, I mentioned this level on my story. If AMD breaks 97, it's going to 100. It's already almost at 100, but it broke after hours. It didn't even really, I guess, a little bit in the last 10 minutes of the day, but you couldn't have traded that. Okay. But 97, now that it's broken, we can look for a bounce. Right. So 97 on AMD tomorrow, looking for a bounce back into 100. Okay. AMD, Amazon has earnings. I'm not looking at Amazon. Okay, Google already reported, but I don't really like anything on Google. I don't trade Google often. Meta, okay, Big Daddy Meta, 558, 560 area. This zone is big. We can look for a bounce. All right, that's where you see all these hourly wick highs. There's also this wick high from back here at 558. All right, so if Meta gets a retracement back into 558 off the open, we can look for a bounce on Meta. All right, 560 to 558 area. Microsoft, huge move after hours, up 7.2% from earnings. All right, Microsoft and Meta beat earnings. Microsoft beat by $2 billion, 2.3%, and they beat their EPS as well. Meta beat by 22%, way higher EPS, and they also beat by 100 or 978 million, $974 million. Okay, so Meta bounce, Microsoft, Microsoft. I like this 405 level. All right, so if you look at the hourly, the 4 hour, and just kind of zoom it out, that 405 is big. Right? You can see how many times it's tapped 405, 405, wicked off of 405 here. Okay, so if Microsoft gets a retracement back to 405, I don't know. That's a really, really big move down. It's at 423 right now. But if it does, I'll look for a bounce at that level, right? So Meta 558 to 560, Microsoft 405, AMD 97. Netflix, I'm not really watching Netflix, although I will say it's pretty overextended. It's had a lot of green days in a row. If you were looking for downside, it would need to go flush this 1100. It would need to flush that 1100 level for more downside because it is overextended, but you don't want to short the strongest name on the market until it breaks structure. And in order for it to break structure, it would have to come down, break below 1100, and then you can see more downside. Okay. So Netflix, and then Nvidia, that 110 level. All right, 109 was the level I used yesterday. I was trying to get a little breakout before the big move. But 110 is our hourly level. There's the wick here, wicks here, wicks here, right? If Nvidia gets a pullback to 110 tomorrow, we can look for that bounce back into 115. All right. So there's some good setups going into tomorrow. As long as market holds overnight and we don't flush like crazy, then we can take some of these bounces off the open. AMD, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, SPY, QQQ, they all look really good to me. And for Tesla, the only way I would take Tesla is if it breaks that big 4 hour level, 292. I mean, this level is just massive. From back here, you see all those wicks and then recent wicks as well. So the only way I would trade Tesla upside is if it goes back above that 292. For downside, it'd have to lose 270. Okay, that's just where we've been kind of forming a base, 270, 272. Okay, but that's pretty much all I'm watching. All right, any questions about those? PLTR. Oh yeah, Hood. I know Hood reported as well. Look at that. Okay. So not much. They're only up 1.7%. They beat EPS by 13%. They beat revenue by $6 million. Not a crazy beat. All right. But let's see. Yeah, 51. 51 is the obvious level. It's a daily level. It's the 4 hour level. And it actually reacted to 51 in the after hours as well. So if Hood can break above 51 tomorrow, you're trading a small account or whatever, that's the level that I would watch for. That's a clean level on Hood. What's the other one that reported? Hood, QCOM. Let me see, QCOM. QCOM beat earnings. Yeah, they beat by 1%. They beat revenue by a little bit. No crazy beat, so I think that's why it sold off. Unless they downgraded their guidance a little bit. But yeah, QCOM's down 6%. The only thing I would watch on QCOM actually, that 144 level. 144, if it gets a pop back into 144, you guys can look for a reject. That's a very obvious hourly level all the way around. It even bounced off of it today. Okay. So 144 reject on QQQ. You can watch that. You can watch the Hood 51 level. There's a lot of levels going into tomorrow. We'll just have to kind of sit and watch and see what happens overnight, and then execute based on which ticker looks the best tomorrow. But there's a lot of potential trades for tomorrow. PLTR. Let's see. PLTR. When do they have earnings? Did they already report? They have earnings on Monday. All right. So they have earnings on Monday. We're getting an obvious rally here. Looks a little overextended. They have supply at this 125 level. PLTR has supply at 125. I would probably be looking for shorts if it got to 125. If not, you could potentially take a bounce just off of, this 116 area, which was the resistance basically from yesterday, that 116. But I'm not really watching PLTR. All right. 125 is big supply, and it's already overextended. So I would be careful taking bounces at this point. Yeah, Kimon. So really, the way that I think about SPY and the sentiment change today, essentially, what we have here is a big reaction from that GDP, the negative GDP, and an aggressive sell off the open. I think too aggressive. So too many people were trying to short SPY just because of that negative GDP. I'm sure a lot of retail saw the negative GDP print and said, I'm just going to short SPY, panic, recession, whatever. But market makers decided to keep it penned because there were big tech earnings, right? They didn't want to have a 5% sell off ahead of Meta and Microsoft earnings, right? So essentially what happened is all of the people who went short off the open, and people who tried to short again, I'm sure a lot of people tried to short right here at 545 because that was that previous level on SPY. So when people got short off the open and then more people tried to short at this 545, that's when the squeeze kind of started, right? That's when the squeeze started. And then we just kept squeezing all day pretty much. And we had a really big squeeze into the close. I don't know if market makers or I don't know if institutions were maybe expecting a beat on those earnings, but we pretty much just retraced back into the range. So we retraced back into the range. That made a lot of sense. The squeeze into the last 10 minutes of the day, I'm not exactly sure what happened within those last 15-minute candles, but this made a lot of sense for them to just print some weakness off the open. Too many people going short, too many people trying to short out this 545. Everyone gets stopped out, and then they just squeeze it back into the range that we were previously in ahead of big tech earnings. That made a lot of sense, but I'm not sure what happened those last 15 minutes. UPS, yeah, UPS. I'm down on UPS. I have UPS at like 125 per share on average, but that's okay. I think they're doing some restructuring. I have a couple of friends who work at UPS, and they're doing some restructuring of their company, especially in the way of decreasing their high volume with Amazon because the margins were so thin. So restructuring sometimes takes a little bit for companies to go through, and we see a little bit of a drawdown. But as far as value goes, it's trading at like 13 times earnings at this price point, and it still pays a dividend, a good dividend. I think, yeah, $1.64 per share. Right now, it's paying a steep dividend for the price value of the stock, right? And it's down quite a bit from highs. It's down 60%. So we'll at least get a dead cat bounce because we really haven't gotten any relief. So it just depends when can it break out of this downtrend. I mean, we have a pretty big downtrend going. Once we can hold off, obviously buyers are going to come in. There's a lot of potential for UPI. It's trading at a very cheap valuation. But when those buyers can come in and we break below out of this downtrend, that's when we'll see more upside. But I think this is still a $150 stock. Even if we don't go back to all-time highs, I think this is a $150 stock, okay? But we should go back to all-time highs eventually. It's just short-term pain, I think, in my opinion. They still make $100 billion a quarter. Yeah, I'm just holding the leaps and equity on that. Starbucks. I bought Starbucks equity this morning after earnings. Yeah, it's already up. But yeah, I bought Starbucks equity at 76. That's a steal. Okay. We don't get that opportunity to own Starbucks this low. We had it back here when the boycotting was happening, back here as well when the market kind of crashed in 2022. Market dropped 28%. But besides that, COVID, there's not a lot of opportunity to pick up Starbucks at such a cheap valuation. So anytime it gets below 80, I buy. So this is a good, I bought at this morning at 76 in the pre-market. Okay, so yeah, I would recommend Starbucks long term. Starbucks isn't going anywhere. They missed a little bit. Who cares? NVO, yeah, I was in NVO swing. I trimmed today. It's still actually ripping some. It's at 66.91 now after hours. So yeah, I got in this swing actually like back here, 67 or something. And then I added down here at 57. This was a perfect add. The reason why I added and I didn't stop is because it still was showing there's no reason for me to stop. It was still showing bullish divergence. It was holding well. Look at all that volume that came in April 17th. That's sign of reversion right there. So it's just been going up since. I like NVO long term. I like NVO at this price point long term. Okay. All right, guys. Yeah, Jay. So there's two ways to look at that. So you have two options depending on your risk level. So let's say for Tesla, sometimes what I'll do, we don't always get the flush and reclaim. Right? Sometimes it'll just bounce at our level. So generally, what I'll do is get an entry once it hits my level or very close to it. I'll get an entry and then wait to see what happens around that entry. All right, I'll just get some starters, very light. And then if we do get the reclaim, that's where I put some size on because now my risk is defined at the previous low. All right. And in this case, I did a little add. I didn't signal in the chat. I added a little bit more size, but nothing crazy. And then I just kind of waited, and I had to start taking some size off because we weren't doing anything. We just chop around for 30 minutes. I start taking size back off, but then I moved my stop up as well. So 274 was my stop. I moved my stop up to 275. So that's kind of how I de-risk a little bit is when I'm in these positions, I'll move my stop according to the price action. So the price action is not looking good, I'll move my stop up. If the price action is looking good and Tesla starts squeezing, then I'll hold off a bit and I'll try to trail it as long as I can. But yeah, for your question as far as do you get in at the level or do you wait for the reclaim? It kind of depends. It depends on your risk tolerance. But a lot of the times we do get to the level and then it just rips. So I don't want to miss out. That's why I just get some exposure. And then if we do get the reclaim, that's where you can just add your size because then you know your stop. Okay. All right. I'll start call swinging again if the market gets another low. I'm a little sketched out still. It's a little ominous. The market's gone up and we're up 15% from those previous lows, but nothing has really happened. Trump keeps saying deal, deal, deal. We're in talks, but no deal is actually being made. So I don't know if the market can continue running on nothing. All right. And at this point, we've just made a really big bounce off that 480. I don't want to start swinging calls after a 15% bounce on the market. I'll start swinging again soon if we get another big drop, but I don't want to start swinging again too early because I don't want to go through drawdowns again, right? We've made our money back from those drawdowns, like with the NVO drawdown, but I don't want to have to sit through those positions again. All right. Same with the pizza. We made some money on the pizza. The contracts didn't move very well, but pizza actually did well. Papa John's. Absolutely, Joss. You can buy and hold for 10 years if it's a company that you believe in. I like the Hems because the market is focusing so much on telehealth now. It's a little overvalued on the books, but if their earnings explode, then it won't be overvalued. The price to earnings ratio is high now, obviously, but if their earnings continue growing, then that number will come down. I do like Hems long term though because the move into telehealth and especially their partnership with Novo and getting those drugs available online, I like that. That to me seems like the future. All right. Same with that PLTR, but again, that's like way too high now. I like it in the 60s or 70s. If it gets back there, can look for long term on that. And those are companies that you hold for years, companies that you believe in for the long term. But I gotta pop off, guys. We are starting our Zoom tonight at 8 o'clock, so I gotta pop off here. But hopefully that helps. We got a lot of good setups for tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully I can finally put some size on some trades and make some good cash to end the week nicely. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your evening. I'll catch you next Wednesday at the same time. Hopefully we don't have any technical issues next Wednesday. Take care, everyone.